Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we are taking the spoiler-free look at Chapter 50 of Kaiju number 8. My goodness, there is so much in this chapter. It's going to be difficult to not give any spoilers, but I will do my best. If you don't want to listen to this, you can go click away, check out the links below the video to take a look at my book, Humans Are Weird. I have the data, and Humans Are Weird, we took a vote, available on Amazon or directly from the author. Anyway, Kaiju number 8, chapter 50. Oh my goodness, Matsumoto is so good at just wrenching your heart out of your chest. On the surface level, this was a pure action chapter. It is the hype, rush, action beat. And I can say with confidence that it's no spoiler to anybody that we get to see Papa Shinamaya just bashing his way through this battle. But Matsumoto was not content to just make this a combat chapter. We get a lot of questions answered, some about what we thought were secondary characters, some about what we thought were primary characters, and on the one hand, we get one theory absolutely confirmed. So one of my favorite theories was absolutely confirmed, 100%, but the method of confirmation, I'm not going to say it completely destroyed my favorite theory, but it did make my favorite theory significantly less likely. Now, because we are looking at this information from the first-person perspective of a character within the story, we can't say that his information is 100% accurate, but my theories regarding whether or not Kaiju number 9 took over Hikari Shinomiya back in the day, it's taken a pretty severe blow with this chapter, but we'll see that. We'll see that in the upcoming chapters. Again, it was a nice theory, but it was always a pipe dream theory. So we'll do that. Now, character development. We get to see more character development for all of our main characters and a certain secondary character. And shout out to Grim Saber. He's really going to like this chapter just for these secondary character developments. And I can't wait to see his video on this. But what we have here is you have this secondary character filling the role of the audience viewpoint in the past 49 chapters. Because in this world of kaiju, we as the audience are not always sure, is this usual? Is this strange? Does this happen often? For instance, if you see a little kaiju lizard skitter by your foot, do you step on it? Do you just ignore it like you would a regular lizard? We don't know. So one of the purposes that secondary characters have, especially characters that are outside the loop of our primary cast, is they react to things. And that shows us how we should be reacting or what we can make of this. If something happens and the secondary character is shocked, we know it's unusual in this world. If the secondary character just accepts it or brushes it off, we know it's common in this world, and this is a very critical role to fill. In the first few chapters, Reno fulfilled that role for us. When we saw Kafka transform into a kaiju, Reno's reaction told us everything we needed to know. Reno's not ignorant of kaiju. He's been working in kaiju disposal. He's been studying for this, training for this to apply to the Kaiju Defense Force, and when he just freaks out having seen Kafka transform into a kaiju, we know this hasn't happened before. Screamy Scientist Guy is another secondary character, although I'd say Reno is more of a primary character. So Screamy Scientist Guy was a secondary character, and he gave us very specific technical information. We learned that it was deeply unusual, almost unheard of, for a kaiju to have a power level over 10. And we learned then from Deputy Director Itami that this wasn't completely out of the blue. At least Itami had considered this possibility in the past. So these two secondary characters are giving us subtle information about what this world is like. Now, in this chapter, Matsumoto uses the secondary characters in a slightly different way. Matsumoto is using these secondary characters to tell us what one of our primary characters is like. And you have these emotional dynamics, and some of them we've seen before and some of them we haven't. But with these older characters, I've pointed out before in previous chapters that these older characters were shonen protagonists in their own right. And at first I thought that back in the day, the deputy director would have been the main MC of the show, but then it turns out that it was actually Hikari Shinomiya, his wife, that was the MC, and he was the main love interest, and we learn more about that dynamic. And we learn more about who Itami and Shinomiya, the Shinomayas, and unsurprisingly, in that group dynamic, you had that one person who was responsible for morally bringing the lesser members of the team up to their level. You've seen this before with MCs. Like Kafka, it's not a universal MC trait, but it is pretty common. So you have various characters who will show perfectly natural levels of self-preservation instinct, of cowardice, of the willingness to bend their morals. But under the gentle, loving influence of our shonen MC, they grow out of that, or rather they grow into a more heroic nature, a more honest nature. The classic example of this in Western media is, of course, Han Solo coming back to rescue Luke Skywalker at the end of the Star Wars movie. You have the more selfish or more self-preserving character just kind of pulled into the gravitational effect of the main character's heroism. And while we don't exactly get to see that happen, we get to see the after effects of that. We get to see the dynamic that exists between these. I guess they're really all secondary characters because Kafka and his crew are the main cast. I've grown so attached to these characters, I don't even think of them as secondary characters anymore. Matsumoto's really integrated this entire cast into our hearts and minds. But you get to see this dynamic between certain characters that shows that one of these older characters really was the heart and soul of the group back in the day and still exerts those main character powers on everyone around them. And I really that this is the magic that saves Kaiju number 8 from, I don't even know what to call it. There's not much criticism of Kaiju number 8 manga out there. At first they were saying it was just an Attack on Titan ripoff, but it's clearly established its own niche separate from Attack on Titan. And the one criticism that I keep hearing from YouTubers, and full respect to them and their opinions, but they keep saying that it's basically just derivative, paint by the numbers. And I really disagree with that. And I think what saves it from being just a paint by the numbers, just another shonen manga, is the way Matsumoto layers on the human relationships and integrates that into the action. Matsumoto is very good at humaning. The characters he writes seem like these aren't untouchable heroes or wild paragons. These are people that you feel like you've met in real life, and he does that without losing that shonen manga shine that they have. And he's made realistic, pragmatic heroes and given them faults and flaws and failures and heroic moments and things that makes you just love them. Like, these are all people that I'd like to meet. I mean, even down to the background scientists we saw in the earlier chapters. I'm like, I have questions for them. If these were people working in my department or my organization, I'd go up and, I know what question I would ask them if I met them in real life. In my opinion, that's what really saves Kaiju number 8 from being just another shonen manga. And again, I will do a full spoiler review as soon as I can. But my goodness, this was a heart-wrenching chapter on so many different levels. And it still leaves us with a lot of questions. So here's the main question. In all media, there is a trope where the main character defeats the enemy and just destroys them physically. But the enemy gives a cackling laugh as it dies and says, I have completed my mission anyway. And that mission is generally a corruption, either morally or literally and physically, of the main character. And at the end of this chapter, we don't know if that's the case. I strongly suspect it to be so, but that's just the pattern of the story up till now. So, at the end of the story, this is, I guess, a minor spoiler because I tell you what the chapter doesn't do. The chapter does not settle the question of whether Kaiju number 9 will be able to take over Iso Shinamaya and the number 2 gauntlets if his main body has been destroyed. Because as I mentioned in my analysis of the previous chapter, Kaiju number 9 is clearly, his actions are clearly based on a cordyceps fungus. Those fungus spread by spores. And the main active bodies, the bodies that crop up out of the bodies of their ants or host or grasshopper or whatever their host species is, die and wither. And as they do that, they release spores which take over more hosts. And we don't know if that's exactly how Kaiju number 9 works. Does he need to physically subsume his victims in order to take them over, or does he just release fungus spores into the air? Because remember, this show has made a deal about the main character wearing filters on their faces. Clearly, the Defense Force has had to deal with either gases or water droplets or something in the air. And the general director, because he was in the command tent, was not wearing one of those filter masks. So has this entire fight just been to force the general director to basically breathe heavy in the place of the spores that Kaiju number 9 is setting off? So even if the general director vaporizes the main body, the damage has been done. I mean, we'll see. This might be something, the corruption might be something that doesn't come into play for several chapters. We don't know, we can't know, which is why I really don't consider this a spoiler. Or Kaiju number 9 could just like chomp the general director. We'll see. Anyhow, that's my take on Kaiju number 8, chapter 49. Chapter 50. I'm going to stop talking now before I give any spoilers. Go check out my books. Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data. Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote. Available on wherever books are sold and directly from the author if you want an author-signed copy. Hit that like and subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, check to make sure you're still subscribed because sometimes YouTube will unsubscribe you. And peace out, my wonderful viewers. Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote, and Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data. 2 books in a series of human absurdity. Go check out these short story collections. What will our little green friends think of us when we finally do make it to space? Find out the answer in 2 books of human absurdity. Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote, and Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and Google Play.